Good evening and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. Just recently, Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Hubert Minnis took Centreville and Bain and Grantstown Member of Parliament in these constituencies of Over the Hill, if you will, and unveiled a plan that ranged from eliminating the use of outside toilets by 2025 to offering tax concessions to businesses and residents by the beginning of the next fiscal year. The plan was laid out in front of a packed crowd at the Grantstown Wesley Methodist Church Hall, who seemed to be, for the most part, receptive to possible changes in their environment. Well, since then, F&M Chairman Carl Culmer has come under fire for backing the government's plan, as well as commending some residents of the over-the-hill communities for attempting to keep their properties in order. He also made strong mention of the invasion of illegal immigrants in those areas who may not be as clean in their surroundings. Well, this is not the first time the people of the over-the-hill areas have been promised a change. So tonight we are discussing inner city blues, total restoration or political rhetoric. Our guests, Dr. Nicola Roll and Kemi A. Jones of the Economic Development and Planning Unit that comes under the Office of the Prime Minister. Also Terrence C.A. Bethel, the National Vice Chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party, and Rhys Chipman, the Free National Movement Member of Parliament for the Centreville constituency. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break.
On the Record is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
Do you believe in light? Do you believe in love? Do you believe in precious moments? Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in tradition? Do you believe in family? Do you believe in home? I believe in the best Christmas ever. For everyone, everywhere. Believe in best. Alive.
Are you afraid to swipe your card and you don't like to carry cash? If so, you need checks. Executive Printers can make checks for all your needs. They have laser checks, personal checks, continuous checks, and more. All checks have up to 15 security features, so you know you'll be protected. You can even customize your checks. Come and see one of our experts today, or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
Welcome back to On the Record. Our topic tonight, inner city blues, total restoration or political rhetoric. Our guests in the first half are the authors and presenters of the Urban Development Plan for Over the Hill communities, Dr. Nicola Roll and Kemi Jones, both of the Economic Development and Planning Unit of the Office of the Prime Minister. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good evening. Happy to be here.
I am so very fascinated by this plan and prospect because you know, the over-the-hill communities really represent the essence of who we are. I mean, that's where we come from. You know, that's where our great-grandparents, and I don't tell you all this history, but that's, you know, that is the essence of who we are. So I want to talk a little bit about the plan itself, what went into it, and what are some of the main goals.
Yes. So thank you for giving us this opportunity. In about August of this year, the Prime Minister gave our unit a challenge to think through his vision for an over-the-hill redevelopment process. And so with that, you know, Prime Minister had been speaking about this for a number of years now, and so we took this challenge to develop a plan and a vision for the rejuvenation of the over-the-hill area. And so we looked at 6 key areas to have a holistic plan. We wanted it to include, of course, the important tenet of economic empowerment. And so with that, we're looking at how do we ensure that jobs are created in this area, that they grow, that they hire people from this area as well. And so we know that a number of incentives and stimulus need to be included in the work. And so here the structuring a program around certain tax incentives and other incentives. Now with those incentives, of course, and we will get into detail with that with a white paper to be released, there has to be also corporate social responsibility. So to receive, you also have to give as well. So that makes up the block of the economic empowerment, and it's about really increasing ownership, increasing entrepreneurship, and expanding business in the over-the-hill community.
I'm curious too, though, as to what would be some of the, what would you have discovered to have been some of the major contributors for the state of the over-the-hill areas? I mean, everywhere you go in the world, there are economically depressed areas, where you call them ghettos, slums, whatever. I think when we say over-the-hill, that's a polite way. Probably one of the nicest terms you will find. But what would you say have been some of your findings in terms of what are some of the things that are the major contributors to the state of the over-the-hill communities?
So there are a couple of key factors. One important issue is land title and property title. And so, you know, you may have a situation where Grammy owned a house, or, you know, Grandpa owned a property. They died, and, you know, your mom lived there. There wasn't a clear transfer of ownership, or maybe there wasn't a will, no probate. And then now you live in it with your children. And so that, having that land title in order to have that be a bankable asset that you can then mortgage or to rehabilitate just isn't there. So we know that one of the key issues that we have to address as part of empowerment and economic empowerment is dealing with land issues. And so there is a land adjudication bill that we're looking at that deals with, you know, looking at claims for over-the-hill properties, but mostly really prioritizing people who live there. So if you fall within those categories where it's just the title isn't quite straight, you want to have that adjudicated.
Does that not also apply to a lot of abandoned buildings? You see homes and businesses, I mean, just buildings sitting there. And then, you know,
as we moved out of the area,
and then there's the argument over who owns it. You know, you got 6 children, and you know, I'm not going to give up my ownership to it.
Well, but Jerome, it also goes to other things in terms of zoning. You'll be aware that we recently had a town hall meeting bringing together the residents and the business community of persons who actually live and work in the over-the-hill community. And even in some of the more focus group meetings we've been having, things such as zoning in terms of the roadside garages, or what you call the bush mechanics, being perpetuated in this area where it's not zoned for that. So things like that, you're bringing down the state of your property. You know, the breeding ground for rodents and these kinds of things that have festered over the years. All of these have contributed to the state of the over-the-hill community thus far.
And the other little businesses, you know, I can set up a takeaway right here, and so you know,
just popping up in an unregulated manner.
And then you got, you know, one of the things that we talked about in the top half of this, when we opened the show, you know, even this issue of the outside toilets.
Now that's an important issue, and it's again, you find it in many situations for a variety of reasons. And a lot of times it's because the homes aren't ready to receive indoor plumbing. These may have been old houses, so the indoor plumbing may not have been put in place. In some cases where there are water connections, the pipes are broken, and so the water has been cut off, and so the next resort then is the pit latrine. And so as a key component of this project, we want to see the phasing out of the outside toilet in these communities, which obviously contaminates the water supply area and then also serves as a nuisance to nearby residents because of a variety of things. And so, you know, we see water and good sanitation for all as a key outcome of this project.
How do you address, and I'm just going to use a scenario. You know, I'm living in Over the Hill. I may be a single parent. I've got kids. I'm bringing home minimal wages. Now you're talking about bringing running water, toilet. You want me to keep my yard clean, fix up my house. These things cost money.
Yeah.
How do you bridge between, you know, what you want and the realities of everyday life? Some people are barely living paycheck to paycheck.
So you've got, you know, the social empowerment part of this as well deals with job training, skills upgrading, things like childcare, so that I can get a job as a single parent. Those types of things make me more employable and enable me to keep my jobs longer as well, so that I can move up the ladder. So you're looking at those types of things. And then as we look at water and plumbing, it's not just a sort of an immediate step. We've got to think about this in the medium term as well. So your first step may be about making sure that the experience of going to the standpipe, the water pump, is a more enjoyable experience. Then you want to assess to see how you can get homes upgraded. Where there are landlords in place, you want to make sure that they are taking care of their properties. And you know, you want to see that those types of things are done so that people can have a better quality of life. You also want to give affordable housing options as well, so that there are high quality housing options with the necessary amenities as well, so there can be alternatives also. And so all of those things will be packaged into the plan, the project plan for this project.
I'm curious, you mentioned the focus groups that you've been undertaking. I'm always curious as to what has the response been from people within these communities. This isn't the first, second, third time we've been at this juncture. Oh, let's revitalize, let's restore Over the Hill, and you know, we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya and stand at the starting line and go, and then that's it.
Well, Jerome, you know, this is not the first time I've had that question put to me as well, and my response is the difference between what's been done in the past and what we're doing now. For example, was brought to my attention, a study was done as far back as 1972. The difference is we're not just talking, we're actually implementing. These programs and thoughts that were done in the past, they were discussed and then shelved. We've actually started implementing distinct programs, and change is already coming out of this.
Some examples.
Well, one example is that on the 4th, we launched an e-learning program at Willard Patton Preschool. So that's talking about preparing for the next generation, using technology to enhance the preschool education in the public schools, bridging the gap between the private schools and the public, so everyone has the same level and access to education. And so far, the results of that program, I mean, it's already just only a week old, and there's been positive feedback, positive interest from the private sector.
Put kids in front of technology, and it takes off. Yeah,
of course. So, I mean, so we're actually doing things now, and for us, the way we're approaching it this time, it's not about an outside in us dictating from the top what's going to be going on. Our project is involving bringing together persons like ourselves in government, bringing together civil society, academia, bringing together the private sector. But at the center of this whole project are the residents and the businesses in the area, letting them drive the process.
A couple of things, you know, when you look at, I mean, in this brief discussion thus far, when you look at all of the problems, and you look at them in their totality, it seems almost overwhelming. You've got the issues of a lack of education. You've got a lack of economic empowerment. You have the social issues. We even ain't talking about crime yet. You know, how do you begin now to prioritize or categorize or attack? I mean, I would stand in the middle there and fold my arms and just say, Lord, however you could.
And that's really where community involvement is critical. And so these stakeholder group meetings help us to think through the most critical issues facing people, so that we're not, you know, talking at 37,000 feet. We're talking at where people are now, but also looking at the long term. So planning for where, you know, we know, you know, people want to be and where they need to be in the future. And so we use a mix of that, but it has to be addressed holistically. So this work, you know, isn't just about the Office of the Prime Minister going in and doing things. As Kemi mentioned, it's community-based, but it's also whole of government-based as well. And so what we've been doing is talking to the permanent secretaries the directors, others in government, to make sure that the issue of the Over the Hill project is a headline in everyone's thoughts, everyone's ministries, so that we take and it's $5 million, at least $5 million being allocated to this as its own budget head for this project. Yes,
that's what government's putting
allotment.
Yes. Right.
But also each ministry as well, as they think through projects, we will work together. So the tablet distribution that was mentioned, for example, is a Ministry of Education component, and so we were happy to partner with them as we think about the cleanup efforts that are necessary for the short term and the long term. We will certainly partner with the Department of Environmental Health. We know that beaches and parks have a large role to play with this in the maintenance of community centers and many of the areas, the verges and those types of things, ongoing maintenance. So what we're doing is making sure that we look at this from a whole of government approach, and so that we can deliver better results in the process. And so our role is also coordinator, to make sure that everyone's talking to each other. We break down those silos and we look at the problem at hand. We package and bundle programs together so that we can get the best results.
We have lots more questions to get to. I mean, I think we've just started to sort of peel back this onion. This is the kind of thing that really excites me. So folks, we're at the point of our first break. I got lots more questions. Stay with us. We are back on the record right after this.
This segment is sponsored by Percy's Island Game.
Honey, did you call the wrecker? I'm here on the side of the road. I can't believe this car is broken down again. Okay, all right, later.
It's beginning to look a lot like cash money. With the game, you know, Island Game is giving away cash to brighten up your day, and the golden ticket that will make you safe. It's beginning to look like the best cash money ever when you play with us.
Deposit $20 on your Island Game account and be one of 60 cash prize winners, or maybe, just maybe, get a golden ticket for a chance to win a new car, trips around the world, or other great prizes. But only if you play at Percy's The Island Game.
Do you believe in light? Do you believe in love? Do you believe in precious moments? Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in tradition? I believe in the best Christmas ever. For everyone. Everywhere. Believe in best. Alive.
We are back on the record tonight. We're discussing inner city blues, total restoration, or political rhetoric. Our guests in this portion of the show, Dr. Nicola Roll and Kemi Jones, both of the Economic Development and Planning Unit in the Office of the Prime Minister. That's a long office to speak to. But yes, one of the things that concerns me, and I think was really the nucleus and impetus in some ways for the show, is when you talk about a program like this and it's coming out of the Office of the Prime Minister and you're talking about government, automatically people think party. This is a political thing. This is being put. This is an agenda item of the new government, and for whatever reason, people may take a step back or think it's it's a good PR exercise. How do you depoliticize this and move it away from something seen as just, oh well, this is the Prime Minister's baby?
Well, having, I think, the wide stakeholder approach is critical to this work. And so it's, having a variety of people involved with the project. So yes, there is a role for government. We do and provide public policy, we provide legislation, and we provide resources. And that's important as well. But having the other stakeholders, we see the community really being the conscience, the driver with this process. And that will include people from all stripes in the process. We're also going to make sure that we reach out across political boundaries as well, because that's very important as you roll out a program like this to make sure that everyone is heard and everyone feels included in the project.
That's my other question. I mean, you would have during the town meeting, you would have had the Bain and Grandstown MP and the Centerville MP, and I saw, you know, on social media, said, well, why wasn't Angliston invited? Or what about Angliston and what about these other communities? Because, you know, the reality is, if a community or a constituency is led by another political party or figure.
Well, Jerome, I mean, in response to that, I'll say this. The first phase of this and the initial zone are the areas of Bain and Grandstown and Centerville. So that was our primary focus. However, you know, once everything is established and stabilized, it will flip and extend further south into St. Barnabas and into Angliston. And, you know, I mean, just in terms of leading up to the town hall meeting, I was getting phone calls from places, people as far as Bimini. Everyone wants to know what's going on.
Well,
I mean, and like I said, you know,
my other question is now Family Islands. You know,
Yeah.
we've discussed New Providence because it's over the hill, but you have a lot of Family Island communities that are facing similar and also unique problems that, you know, that sort of stem from some of the same things.
Yeah, so we see this as an important first step, as a pilot project in terms of getting this done very well, and certainly this one will relate specifically to urban development challenges of our most densely populated island, New Providence. And then, you know, as we roll out, also including other areas as well. And then, of course, there's other work that's happening on Family Islands through other projects as well that we're looking at. You would have remembered we launched the Sustainable Andros project a few years ago, and we're continuing to work with that to look at an Andros Ecosystem Services Master Plan. And that was a template for how we think about Family Island development. Again, all of these had great participatory approaches so that the people drove the end product.
What are you hoping to be, or what are some of your key performance indicators when you look back a year, 2 years? What are some of the things that you are hoping that you can, if I can use the phrase, sort of tick off that, you know, that you would have accomplished through this?
Yeah, we want to see business growth. We want to see people feeling, and so you'll have quite a bit of primary surveys in terms of ease of doing business in this area, cost of doing business as well. We want to see expansion of alternative energy approaches as well. So there is a green component to this work. You know, so we want to be able to show technology at use as well. So there's also a smart approach to this. So, you know, getting businesses with websites and being able to do different things like that. We want to see employment numbers change. So we want to know the people who've been enrolled in programs that are done through this project. So if there's job training opportunities, if there's soft skills training opportunities, we want to see that many people from this area have taken up that opportunity to get some of those skills, and the end result also of whether we're seeing them getting employed. And so that's going to be important to have those indicators there to show success.
Kimmy, one of the things that, you know, I'll use the proverbial elephant in the room is how does crime factor into all of this? Because these over-the-hill communities are breeding grounds for criminals and criminal activity.
Well, we're touching on that in many different aspects. One, looking at the cleanup efforts. We have actually right now Department of Environmental Health going around and surveying the area and looking at, you know, dilapidated buildings that are being used as hotbeds for criminal activity. We've also spoken to the police force, and, you know, they've already launched their CCTV program downtown and in other certain areas, and now they're looking to redeploy that and push further into the over-the-hill community. So that means more CCTV there to detect and prevent crime where possible in that area. So our approach again is holistic, and it is data-driven. It's looking at where are these hotspots, how can we stop this activity.
Yeah.
Now, you're talking about sort of the interdiction. Is there, or does this plan speak to addressing some of the root causes, some of the things that drive people into criminal activity or criminal behavior?
So one of our components is particularly around youth and at-risk youth, where we look at programs and activities for young people so that we prevent idleness. We looking at the assets that exist in these communities, the community centers that exist, the programs that exist with churches and other organizations already doing things, so that youth have ample opportunities to engage in productive activity after school. After school programs looking also at homework assistance as well, so that you're more likely to succeed in school and stay in school, which we know gives you a hand up when you're looking at potential for jobs, potential for moving on to college, those types of things. And so we know we have to look at the social side of this and blending in programs that already work with urban renewal and other programs, social services work as well, so that we again have this holistic approach.
As you mentioned urban renewal, that is always a hot button issue depending on who's in. So are you incorporating or keeping the existing components of that? How is that working? Because, you know, there's always a concern that you throw out the baby with the bathwater.
I guess to put that succinctly, we have spoken to the urban development team already, and they're pulling together a plan as well. So we've already met with them, and the idea is that we will merge our plan with theirs for the Over the Hill community. Yeah. So it's going to be a collaborative approach, just because they've been on the ground longer and dealt with many of the issues. So
they have some insight.
They do. Yeah. So we're collaborating with them. That process has already begun.
So in earnest, what is in place will continue.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're not duplicating, erratic. You know, we're bringing together the best elements of what exists, and then looking at gaps to see what's new that we need to put in there.
Two things I want to address. How much of a problem have you discovered is parenting? Because you find a lot of the issues related to our young people and our kids are directly related to bad parenting. And there's always the hue and cry, well, you know, there's nothing to teach you how to become a parent. You just have this child or these children and you go about. And secondly, what role is the church playing in all of this? Yeah, I see the smile. Because the church, you know, that's a punching bag.
No, the smile is not from a negative aspect.
Right.
Just because, you know, we've actually been speaking to some of the churches in the area too, and we see that there are programs in place, such as, you know, the different boys brigades and those different activities going on.
Are they willing to get involved? I can tell you.
Oh, yes, they are.
They are. I see it's a lot of times they're interested in the collection and the pasta car and all these other things. They seem to be focused. To be quite honest, you know, I always thought they've
been beating down our door so far to get involved.
Yeah, churches,
they have been receptive.
They play a big role, and so one of the things we want to do to assist is, for example, just putting together a portal, a website, where we can list all of the activities that are currently going on in the community. That's a quick win in the short term. That can
you can't mandate them to give some of the collection to the community. I put that in legislation.
But you know, they're offering so many services as well. And so it's about making sure that people know where these exist. Imagine the opportunity to have a phone app where you can say, I'm located on this corner. Where are the feeding programs around me? I'm hungry. Where are the Boys Brigades activities? You know, where can I you know, find another parenting class? Those types of things, which exist, but it's about coordinating what is there.
A big part of this, I would imagine, would be the involvement of the wider community, those non-over-the-hill communities. A lot of us would have gotten our starts. Our families come from them, but we move out. You know, we move out west, we move into the south, we move other places, and you know, we abandon the over. We go back to church, or you know, or drive to, or whatever. But you know, how do people get involved on an individual basis or an organizational basis? You know, if you're a group or something, and you say, "Hey, I've heard about this," or I do want to do something. How do we get involved? How do we help?
Well, part of the mechanism for this vehicle recreating to manage the development over the hill, it also talks about establishing a fund so that those persons who have moved out and who want to give back, they have a distinct vehicle and a mechanism where there's a financial contribution, as well as getting involved in some of the community projects. So there's the personal, social contribution as well. So we're looking at it again from all of those aspects, and those are all being put together in legislation so that we can keep this moving.
And time and talent, because you know, a lot of times people, you don't have it to give, or you're skeptical about giving, but you know, that's that time and talent.
It's amazing, and there is a desire to contribute. As we launched the Willard Patton tablet distribution with the Ministry of Education, situation, we were able to not just draw on ministry's resources, but also the goodwill of so many contributors and our corporate sponsors who work to enable us to have the infrastructure in place.
Well, that's very good to hear that people are interested in giving and doing, and not just throwing money at projects. I never believe in that. You know, I want to first of all congratulate you and encourage you on the good work that you're doing. I will also encourage you to, as much as possible, keep the public informed about what you're doing. Definitely. Because this is all wonderful, and we can talk about, oh, you know, we've launched this, but you know, 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months from now, people want to know and be able to see what has been done. You know, because the reality is you're going to sit back for a bit and see how it all pans out, and you know, make a determination about whether you want to get involved. So you know, I applaud and commend you for the work, and we'll do our part as much as possible to help.
Just before we leave, one thing I definitely do want to put out there, if anyone wants to reach out to us, please feel free to call us at 702-5565 or 702-5566. So feel free to give us a shout and give us your thoughts and comments. We're open to dialogue.
And you can call those numbers if you want to get involved as well.
Exactly.
With the project. Dr. Nicola Rowe, Kemi Jones, thank you very much for coming. This has been certainly very enlightening for us. We could have talked for the whole hour. We have some other folks here who are going to come and really begin to debate and dissect this even more. But keep up the good work. This is the kind of stuff that our country needs, particularly to move forward. I know we've been at this juncture before. I just hope and pray that this is now going to be, you know, we're going to move this forward because we really need to.
Thank you. We're hopeful.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming. Well, we're at the halfway mark in our show. We're discussing inner city blues, total restoration, or political rhetoric. Well, we've heard one side of the coin. Our guest on the other side of the break will be Terence C.A. Bethel. He's a national vice chairman of the PLP as well as a member of parliament for the Free National Movement, Reese Chipman. When we return, we're going to advance this discussion, the pros and cons of this plan. Stay with us. On the Record continues right after this.
Do you believe in light? Do you believe in love? Do you believe in precious moments? Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in tradition? I believe in the best Christmas ever. For everyone. Everywhere. Believe in best. Alive.
Did you call the wrecker? I'm here on the side of the road. I can't believe this car is broken down again. Okay, all right, later.
It's beginning to look a lot like cash money. With the game, you know, Island Game is giving away cash to brighten up your day, and the golden ticket that will make you save. It's beginning to look like the best cash money ever when you play with us.
Deposit $20 on your Island Game account and be one of 60 cash prize winners. Or maybe, just maybe, get a golden ticket for a chance to win a new car, trips around the world, or other great prizes. But only if you play at Percy's The Island Game.
Welcome back to the second portion of tonight's show. Our topic, inner city blues, total restoration or political rhetoric. We continue our discussions with our guest on this portion of the show, Reese Chipman, an accountant but a member of parliament for the Centerville constituency, and Terence C.A. Bethel, also an accountant and the national vice chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party. Gentlemen, welcome to On the Record. Reese, welcome back. Terence, welcome.
Yeah, first time being here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So you would have got an opportunity to listen to the first part of the show.
Yes.
This national development plan and what the Prime Minister is hoping to do through his office and through these individuals and these programs. I want to back up a bit. What has led, in both of your opinions, what has led to the consistent neglect of over-the-hill communities through successive governments? I mean, you look at, you know, how the majority rule movement and even independence movement got their start in these over-the-hill communities. It's where it's where really the Bahamian identity began in some instances. But the neglect that has come, in the decades.
Which is the interesting word. The interesting word is neglect. Is that what has happened is those persons who live there moved out. And they neglected where they used to live. So,
but if I move out, is it my job to look after? I mean, I've moved, I'm taking care of where I am now.
Well, I agree with you, but what happens is sometimes they've left parents there. Sometimes they've left, when their parents have moved out, they've actually left those homes there and they rent them out. And so many of the homes there are rental. But there is some of the neglect that we talk about is about how the residence has changed. The people who were the owners, the people who are property owners, are now mostly people who are renting. So that definitely a different level of care. So you talk about the government is always responsive to what people want, and people wanted to move out. People wanted to explore.
So we created those. We created the suburbs and the
absolutely
the nicer areas.
And I don't think there was any intention to neglect. I think that over time you respond to now the people in their new areas and what they want in those new areas.
I think, Jerome, quite frankly, it is the politics that has caused this neglect. I mean, if you look at those areas, there is this level of instability in terms of, which constituency I'm in one year versus which constituency I'm in the next year, which street do I live on, no street signs. These are the little things that cause instability, confusion, and also neglect. And I think the politics contributed to this neglect, and that's why I'm very happy that our administration is looking at an independent boundary commission to stabilize these communities in terms of identifying with who they are. And so, it's not so much for me whether someone wants to go back and help, because even today people want to go back and help and build where they're from. My grandfather still lives in Centerville, and so I have to go back almost on a weekly basis. And so when we start to look at neglect of over the hill, we need to look at our politics and try to determine how we can frame an infrastructure where our people, our communities, and our inner city can maximize their potential.
Interesting you would have said infrastructure. And to me, that is one of the greatest travesties, that we still don't have proper plumbing, running water.
Well, now, you see, that's the thing. So you do have proper plumbing. It's just not everybody doesn't have it.
Well, when you say proper, I mean, I want to make it's universal.
Yes, well,
I can't say in my area that everybody doesn't have proper plumbing. I mean, the infrastructure is there for you to connect.
Right, so the infrastructure is there to connect in many cases. And then the people, and Dr. Roll did talk about some of the reasons why people don't connect. And that probably has nothing as much to do with the actual fact that it's available, because availability is not the issue, is their ability to take advantage of it. The reality is that when you look at these communities, there are homes that are very well taken care of, so we don't act like everything is going wrong there. And we also must be very cognizant of the fact that people do have choices about how they live and do these things. Now, it is incumbent upon the government maybe to be the people leading people to make the better choices. It's incumbent upon the government to decide what those minimum standards of living and quality of life ought to be. And that is where the government ought to begin the record. And that is why the Progressive Liberal Party made sure that that's where they focused. And they began this whole, this didn't begin in the administration, because this is a part of the National Development Plan. And the National Development Plan includes these. And if you look at this plan, it shows where the National Development Plan tied to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. All of that is a part of how this plan was developed. And so what's happened is this existing National Development Plan is now being brought further into some action in a very interesting and unique way.
Two things. What makes this, what's going to make this different this time around, if anything? What's going to be different this time around? And the fact that it's called a National Development Plan says to me that it should go across party lines.
Well, the first thing
is,
right.
It shouldn't be an instance of where, you know, because I'm in today, I'm going to start over and I'm going to sort of shelve what was done previously, and we do know from previous experiences that that's what happens. So one, when to start out, you know, from the government's perspective, what's different this time around? Why should I believe that things going to be any different this time around?
And Jerome, it's a very good question. I mean, and like you would have indicated, successive governments, you know, have left the over-the-hill community in a position not to benefit from, of course, adequate plumbing, proper infrastructure. But this time around, Jerome, I see more of a push, more of an effort in terms of implementation. The Office of the Prime Minister, you know, I'd really have to say thank you to those persons, Kemi Jones and Dr. Nicola Roll, because it's a lot of work that have gone into the National Development Plan. But this time I see a forward thrust in terms of implementation. As a matter of fact, we were supposed to begin this project in May of next year, and the Prime Minister decided to pull it up. So we began December 4th, and we started to get the communities cleaned up and just moving forward. So I see an approach more of implementation than just designing a framework so that it just looks pretty. And so definitely I see that there will be a difference this time.
So what has happened so far with this National Development Plan, that the present government has decided to politicize this. So they said it's going to include Angliston, right? And only people who were there at the meeting at Wesley Church, the church where I grew up, the church where I went to Boys Brigade, the only people who were there were the members of Parliament for the F&M constituencies that were there. The, one single area, Angliston, the MP was not invited. When you heard the approach at the event was for our party. That was the introduction, for our party. Okay, and this, I mean, you know, first of all, in the Methodist Church, I wonder why they would allow something to be very partisan taking place in its place, because that's one of the things we never stand for. But in any case, this obviously has become very partisan already. So I see a lot of problems, because this already has a partisan edge to it, and that's exactly what the government is doing now.
Yeah,
and so it's probably not going to be very successful, given, you know, well, I mean, there's a competence level issue as well, but they've not included Angliston, and so they're ready to start.
I would have raised that question in the last segment. But
right. Yeah, I think, like Terence would have indicated earlier, this hasn't just started, right? The process was in place. The National Development Plan has been in an organized function for many years,
right,
which means that the Member of Parliament for Angliston is quite aware of the National Plan. This part of the National Development Plan is actually just Chapter 7 of the National Development Plan, is the Over-the-Hill Rejuvenation Program. So they are aware, we're all aware, all of the Member Parliaments are aware of the Over-the-Hill Social and Economic Empowerment Program.
True.
Now, I also want to say that Centerville is not all included, right? Because the line is drawn right on it's the west side of Collins. And so 1,500 of my constituents who would include Roll Avenue and Culmersville are not included in this first portion of the of this particular program. Also, the night of the event, we did have St. Barnabas, Member of Parliament, Shannon Cartwright was there, and he is not included at this time. The thing is, Jerome, there's only so much you can do.
You proved the point.
There's only so much you can do when we look at not only budgetary constraints, but also want to move forward. And so we intend to move forward with this program, yes, based on our budget, but it is an initiative that we think needs to begin soonest, and we have mapped out an area.
But you had Shannon Cartwright there, and you didn't have
hold on just a minute. When you look at, for instance, the urban renewal program that the PLP touted to, I would estimate, to do what this portions of what this National Development Plan intend to do. What is, or how do you see, what's the difference, or is there a difference? I mean, you would have heard in the last segment there's supposed to be some amalgamation of programs, but what would you say the urban renewal program was doing differently or would have done better than you see happening here?
Well, so I don't say that it's doing anything better. I think that, remember, this was developed to coordinate the whole approach of national development. And so if you know, I didn't just come into this whole National Development Plan thing. I've been following this from the beginning. I've been attending the meetings. I understand what it's about. I know the how the Sustainable Development Goals are tied to the National Development Goals. I understand the 15 goals. I know where the things are. Okay, so this isn't something new for me. What this is a way to coordinate the approach of national development. That was what we were trying to do by creating the National Development Plan, and obviously it's an opportunity now for the present government to embrace this opportunity. A structure is in place. You now know how to go about it. You know how to create the framework. You know who the contact areas are, and that's what the National Development Plan has been sitting in that state basically since November of last year, and the many changes that are going as just each government has to simply go in and pick out, okay, these are going to be our priorities. But when we have these priorities, it's going to allow us a coordinated approach because everybody has a stake in some area. And so she talked about how the Ministry of Health, Environmental Health, will coordinate with the program as well. So this is what the development plan is supposed to do. It's supposed to allow coordination across all political.
That's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. And the Minister administration would have made this priority. And that is
but do you accept, though, Reese, that this just didn't happen post-May? That this had been something that had been...
Absolutely.
To my point, you know, that this, in my estimation, is how government is supposed to work.
Absolutely.
That there is a transfer or a continuation or continuity of those things that are good.
Right. And then, but you got to make sure you don't make it partisan.
So that is your complaint, that you see that this is going to be partisan. I'll put a pin in it right there because we've got to take a break. But I want us to address that when we come back. Stay with us. We're going to continue our discussions on the record right after this.
Christmas looks different for every Bahamian. What we watch, what we search for, what we give, who we give it to, and who we call. But no matter how different Christmas looks for all of us, when we look at the bigger picture, we see it's you and us together that makes Christmas, Christmas. Rev, you and us together.
Welcome back. This is our final segment of this episode. Our topic tonight is Inner City Blues, Total Restoration or Political Rhetoric. My guests, Reese Chipman and Terrence Bethel. As we went into the break, we really talked about, you know, what seems to be at the core of a lot of these issues, and that is the politicization of the restoration redevelopment. It depends on which party is in, who's the MP, what is the focus, but meanwhile, the people suffer, you know, and they suffer under consecutive governments. I think there's blame to be thrown all around. Terrence, your concern is this time around, even though we see the continuity of this National Development Plan, which I think is a good thing we've all agreed to, but your concern is that you already see sort of the politicization of what is happening.
Right, and I mean, that is very clear. I mean, Mrs. Hannah Martin, you know, so you have this meeting, right, and this is the meeting to launch this. And so you include all of the people who are going to be involved in any way. And then you chose not to include Mrs. Hannah Martin.
But, okay, I'm not here to defend, but when I brought it up earlier, it was said, we're rolling it out in stages. You know, this is the stage one, but they will be included in the stage. I'm not here to defend. I'm just sort of going back to what was said.
So he said Sheldon Cartwright was not supposed to be a part of the stage.
Was he invited or did he just show up?
He was.
He was invited.
I'm
sure. Well, he was our MC at the event.
He was moderator.
But you know, I do not agree that this is going to be politicized. You know, I found that during the campaign and even in prior politics, that the urban renewal was very, very politicized. I mean, there were persons that wouldn't get their roofs fixed, couldn't get their house painted, just because they were from one party or the other.
But
I do not encourage that. I do not encourage that at all, because the Centerville community, for one, was one that, you know, we were down 1,000 votes. And so obviously a lot of PLPs would have had to support me. And so I, for one, could not encourage a political approach to this particular project. And I think the administration is not looking at it in a political way. I would hope not, because then that would then offend me as representative for a community that's quite split, 1906 to 1904. Right, is what the 1902 is what the votes were. And so even in the beginning, and like we would have indicated, it is a step-by-step approach. And we would have invited community leaders, we would have spoken to community leaders, we would have spoken to others. The National Development Plan in itself was non-political. There was a non-political approach to developing it. Right. I do not see why, if we would carve out a portion of that, why would we remain or make it political?
I have a question in this regard, too, even to the opposition, because while you are in opposition, is there an obligation of sorts to ensure that you're a part of this as well?
Absolutely.
And will that happen?
You know, if we get the invitations to be a part of it, we will always participate. This is our baby. This is the thing that we did because we realized it was important when we were the government. When we become the government again, we will continue it. This is a plan that goes to 2040. Okay, plan is not, you know, there was very low participation. Most of the people who opposed the government were saying this is just a PLP plan, it ain't nothing serious, right? So now they realize it was value created while the PLP was in government. This is the value that we have 25 years of looking at how we're going to change our country and how we're going to try to keep pace with the rest of the world and look at the things that affect human beings.
What are the obligations of those who do not live in Over the Hill, who are not connected outside of maybe family roots? What is the wider obligation of every Bahamian to become a part of this and to help to ensure that this happens?
Well, certainly I can assure you that one of the things that is going to be happening is that those Progressive Liberal Party branches in those areas are going to be having the National Development Plan persons come in and speak to them about this, because that's a part of what we're doing. We're continuing to make sure that our people are actually involved in this process. The other thing that I think is important is many of us, like you say, go back to churches in those areas, right? So Wesley Church there, First Nassau Company of Boys Brigade, I was a member, Bernard Nottage was a member, Pat Ramming was a member, Alonzo Butler was a member. There were lots of people who have important input in this country were part of that organization. And through that organization itself, we are able to continue to contribute to the Over the Hill area.
And let me ask you this, is a Boys Brigade still relevant to young people and young men? This is where they exist. Young people exist in technology, in cyberspace, and they exist in spaces that are don't seem to be aligned with the Boys Brigade. Don't get me wrong, excellent program, did some wonderful work and turned out some great men like yourself and some great people, but are those kinds of programs still relevant to young people? Reese, I want to start with you. Are they still, is that what we really need, or is that the focus of what we need now?
Yeah, those programs are still relevant, Jerome, simply because there is a gap between those that are marginalized and, of course, where they exist now on the internet. So we still have this gap to fill in terms of educating young people, young men, on how to live, what's right and wrong, what's respectful. Just in campaigning, you'd go around and sometimes people would walk straight past you and you have to say good morning to these young guys. And before, back in the day, you know, we knew we had to say good morning. And so there's this basic need to educate even at the level of respect and knowledge about your environment, who you are, who you should be. And so I think that there is a need for the Boys Brigade and those sorts of programs because we do have a gap to fill. However, I do understand the technological aspect of it and the fact that we are moving in that direction, but we want to pull them along.
Right, and so there's always going to be that need. The problem that you are getting is what Reese called, it's, you know, the social interaction. They're very, very weak in social interaction.
Because I'm in a meeting and I'm like, this is how you come around, this is what young people are doing all day long.
But they're doing that to the guy sitting in front of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's
That's
really,
how they communicate.
and it's really, and so it's, okay, so that's now a problem. See, we might want to address that in Over the Hill, but we've got to address it everywhere.
Well, yeah, that's a national problem.
That's a national problem, and putting free Wi-Fi might just exasperate that, you know, but still it's needed. I think the whole island should be free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but that is the far-reaching approach to the Over the Hill empowerment program, is that, yes, we do want social and corporate responsibility. We do want people that are now not in the area to come back and to make a contribution, whether it's financial or whether it's just time. But that is absolutely necessary. And so there is a far-reaching approach. There's a holistic approach to making sure that our socioeconomic, the socioeconomic impact of this program also is felt in the city.
To what extent have our politicians really failed over the hill communities and exacerbated the situation? You hear the hue and cry many times. The people are elected and then, you know, you see them 4.5 years later. They won't get to the House of Assembly. They get up and, you know, every time it's time for, oh, I speak on behalf of the good people of... and that's it. And you hear it, you see it all the time. You know, people of these, well, you know, all voters are really players in a pawn game sometimes, or players on a chessboard to achieve a goal. But after the election, and after you get where you are, it's a, you know, I host a back to school or a Christmas party, give out some ham and turkey, but no real change in these communities.
But the structure's in place. You got to just take advantage of the structure. So every one of these,
do we accept though
every
that
one of
we
these
are
political,
in this?
Every one of these political parties have constituency associations or branches. Every one of them. You go to those, the MP is going to be present. Because those are the people who are campaign workers who showing up there. So they're going to be present. You go there and you hold them to what it is you want them to do. You communicate with them. Those structures are in place. My feeling is that people are not taking advantage of that enough. You know that they post their meetings on the television, they post them online, they put them on Facebook. They send it on WhatsApp and all of that stuff, and all you have to do is show up.
Go ahead.
Well, it is a two-way street, Jerome. I mean, the constituents and the Member of Parliament. We need to talk more, we need to communicate more with each other. I think there's this, because of years past and the politics of years past, you know, no one trusts each other, right?
And because we opposite, I can't seem to be working with you.
But exactly.
And I think we need to embrace a little bit more communication and good communication. You know, for me, I know when I do go to the House of Assembly and I try to speak to as many people in Centerville as I can, because there will be times that you cannot be down there.
Are you talking to an Angliston in the House of Assembly? Say, hey, you know, we've got this situation that's bordering our two constituencies, or you know, we have this issue that goes across party lines. Are those kinds of discussions?
I'll tell you what's going on in Fox Hill right now. So just before the election, the Fox Hill Community Center was launched and opened, right? To benefit the residents of Fox Hill, right? This is done with IDB money, which has to do through the government of the Bahamas, to benefit the people of Fox Hill, right? The lights are off, the people are not being paid, because the former MP was the person who coordinated that project. The present MP decided, you know, they ain't doing nothing to pay the bill. The lights are off. The people are not being paid. And this was something to benefit. So this organization, our present government, is really interested in not being partisan and trying to roll things forward. Definitely every indication is they're not.
Well, I would hope the Member of Parliament is not ensuring that electricity is off at a community center. I mean, that is something that I cannot, I would not condone.
It hasn't been paid. What has she done about it being paid?
However, I think...
Okay, what about she done about the people who work there being paid?
This
is an area that needs intervention.
We'll be able to get a response.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you know, I think, you know, we need to remain focused, right? And that is important. We need to remain focused on the goal of maximizing the potential of Over the Hill. And that is really what my responsibility is, as a member of parliament for Centerville, I would like to see a better Centerville, a better community. And so I just want to go back to the conversation with regards to, you know, are we a part of a system? And Jerome, I campaigned against that system, whether it was F&M or PLP. I campaigned that we needed a change in the way we go about doing things, in the way we treat each other, the way we speak to each other, a change in our politics.
Agreed.
And so I will stand by that. And so I do not, so I do think the politicians have been and could be a part of why there's so much neglect or misunderstanding, so much negativity in Over the Hill. However, we need to move forward, and that needs to change, and I want to be a part of that change.
Well, that's a positive thing. And I commend that. And, you know, I always say that we have to be Bahamians first.
Exactly.
But sometimes we allow politics and colors to divide us.
Right.
But very quickly, because we're running out of time, we speak to, though, the condition of Over the Hill. But there is another, you know, and that speaks to the people of our color and our background. But there's that other segment of the Bahamas too, that I don't know how much they're included in the National Development Plan, but that we set aside and we only go to when we want something.
The ones that don't look like us.
Yes, no, they are the white Bahamians or the County Joes or whatever, and it's almost and it still exists in some places. Is that almost us against them situation? Now, there's the Over the Hill thing, so you know, you all stay out and
well,
we keep
it'll be very interesting to see what the involvement is.
Yeah, well,
I know that we you know, certainly we've seen the involvement of Mr. Chris Savousis in trying to.
Let me first of all qualify that there are some white Bahamians who are very involved, who are a part, you know, but you know, I'm talking about on a larger scale.
Right, yeah, so he's trying to do some work at the Sandlands Primary School, but he can't get the Minister of Education to get on board with it, you know. So these are the types, they are, some of them who actually are doing it, and I don't think that, you know, they benefit from everybody being better off. You know, those people who own businesses are always benefiting from people who be better off.
And the people who have businesses in those communities who do nothing. And you know, I always say, my own personal stance is, if every business gave $1,000 to some charity, just 1,000, wow, how better off we would be as a country.
Well, we intend to reach out to the businesses in Centerville because they're very supportive. However, I just want to touch on the white Bahamians. I think they've been very supportive of Centerville. They have had, we've had.
They support Centerville or you?
Well, I would. I would.
And that's a problem too. Well, you have to be honest sometimes.
And I will be honest. I think they're supportive of Centerville.
Okay.
Right. And I will say that because we've had bark programs where you spay and neuter dogs, and these persons have offered their time, 20, 30 of them in the inner city. They've been going through Lily and Valley Corner, going through educating people on the reasons why and why not. Because it could be, and you know, it could harbor sicknesses, etc.
We have a stray dog problem.
And so we do have the support of Bark, and Bark has been very helpful. As a matter of fact, they've done it before, not just since I've come there. And that is why I would say it's Centerville. And so I do think there are individuals contributing. There are lots more that would like to. And so we just need to make sure that they're tied in with
very quickly, you got 30 seconds. Terrence, starting with you. What do you want to see, you know, out of this National Development Plan and this new thrust?
Well, certainly I am wishing every success with this plan. This is what it was for. It's to obviously to make the people live better and strengthen the systems and economic environment, and to get a better quality of life for all of the people in the area. And I'm certainly behind that happening.
Reese?
Well, you know, we started with the launch at Willard Patton Primary School. Well, Willard Patton now preschool. I went to Willard Patton Primary School, so I was very happy about that. And to see all of the kids with tablets there, it was very impressive. And so what I'd like to see is a continuation of that. I'd like to see a continuation of social empowerment, continuation of economic empowerment, a rejuvenation of our inner city communities, and where we're applying a lot of honesty and respect to our young people so that they can grow and maximize their potential. And so that's what I'd like to see moving forward from this project.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
And thank you for having
We've had a wonderful discussion
this
evening. I appreciate you coming on and talking, and hopefully, you know, this is now we're going to move towards total restoration.
Yes.
You know, I applaud and I encourage both sides to come together to continue to implement this national development plan. You know, the present government has met it in place. Obviously, it's been vetted by some experts who you would have heard from earlier, and I trust that this is the beginning now of us coming together, you know, as a country to really move towards a common goal.
Yes.
You know, because I always say we Bahamians first.
Absolutely.
You know, every 5 years we row, but when that's over, let's get back to building a country.
Right.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope that you have all enjoyed tonight's show. A special thanks to Reese Chipman, Dr. Nicola Roll, Kemi Jones, Terrence Bethel, my producer, technical staff, and of course you, our audience, for watching each week. Be sure and join us for On the Record next week, our final show of the season. Hope to see you then. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.